Real Madrid are famous for remontada. Can it happen? Welcome to the recap. Barcelona is now into the semis. Also, PSG is into the semis. But let's talk about los Reyes de la Remontada, kings of the remontadas, Real Madrid. How faithful are you, Manny, that this is gonna happen?
We need is 1%. Just 1% of a chance.
1% of a chance. What makes a Madridista so, faithful and positive that they can do it?
Because they have done it and they've proven it many times.
I agree. But does Madrid actually have the football to do it now?
The football to do it is just they need to be set in a position to succeed. And that all comes down to Ancelotti.
I know you've been saying in the show, and if you guys been watching the show, Manny is not a fan of Ancelotti. He wants this man to get fired.
It's
Okay.
time for a change.
What do you think is gonna be his lineup?
What do I think is going to be his lineup, or what do I
Yeah.
want the lineup to be?
What do you think is gonna be his lineup?
I think he's going to start with Courtois. He's been good, reliable. The game could have gotten really ugly if it wasn't for him. I feel he'll start Alaba on left back again. Rudiger, he's been going with him all year. I think Asensio will start, and then I could see Fede at right back.
I've heard multiple sources say that it's between Alaba, obviously, and Garcia. But I think Alaba is the right choice. I believe you want Garcia, right?
I would feel more confident in Fran.
Why though? I think Saka it would be a game of men versus little kids.
Man, Saka's gonna cook regardless, but I feel
Yeah.
Fran at least has the pace to keep up. I think Alaba will just get dogged like he did in the first game.
I agree, but I think it would be worse for Fran. I
I
really
don't
do.
think so
I don't think
because
Fran has the experience. He has the speed, but he doesn't defend. He doesn't go forward. Honestly, how does he play at Madrid? I don't know. But I think Saka, regardless, is gonna cook, but this is like a double patty in a bun and call it home, bro. He's gonna double cook this if you put Fran. Now, I've heard that Vasquez can play right back instead of Valverde.
I'm actually not mad at that. That's actually what I would prefer. I would prefer Fede in the middle, and I feel they were really targeting Alaba, and I don't think Martinelli can really cook Vasquez as bad as other elite for wingers have.
I in my personal opinion, I really believe that if Vasquez plays, it's over. Martinelli is gonna cook him. I'm not saying Martinelli's at Rafinha's level, but Martinelli is a pure speedy dribbler. He's gonna cook him, especially the fact that Vasquez likes to go up, and it's gonna be hard for him to drop down because of the speed of Arsenal. Especially the speed of Martinelli. I think it's gonna be the wise choice would be Valverde, but obviously you're trying to push Valverde up to the midfield. But I think Vasquez is gonna have a nightmare. I think your both wings, your left back and your right back, are gonna have nightmares tomorrow.
I feel Asensio and Fede could help him out on that side. I think Vasquez could do a decent job.
Now let's go to the midfield. What are we looking at? Are we looking at midfield a four or a three?
I think he's gonna go back to his 4-3-3, if I'm being honest. I think
Okay.
Vinny and Mbappe and Rodrigo will be back up top. And I could see Ceballos, Tchouaméni, and Jude playing in the middle.
But Ceballos barely came back from injury. I don't think he's going to be, match ready to go, at least be a starter.
Yeah, our options are limited because of injuries. Like we gotta go. I'm sorry,
But you also get,
Ceballos.
still get Chumeni back. Kamavinga's not in because he got the double yellow, but you get Chumeni. You don't think Chumeni is going to be Chumeni, Valverde, and maybe Modric?
I don't want Modric to start.
Why?
He doesn't have the legs for it anymore, and it shows. He'd be great to come in around the 75th, 8th minute. Like he could be a super sub, but Ancelotti's just been like inclined to start him this season, and it's not working. He does his best work when he's coming in late now.
So you'd rather take a 10% match fit Ceballos than a ready, proven veteran? Yes, he doesn't have the legs no more, like Modric, to start.
Yeah, we gotta get the ball and we gotta move. We need fresh legs.
And on top, obviously, we're going to go with the same three then. Vinicius, Mbappe, Rodrigo. What does the top three need to do to be able to help this team out and do the remontada?
Rodrigo needs to pretend that they're Man City. Vinny needs to go back to Ballon d'Or form, and Mbappe needs to do what he was doing at the start of 2025. Just cooking.
I also believe that their press is bad. They don't
Yeah,
press correctly, and it starts from the top. And once Arsenal passes that first line, and now they're in the midfield, Vinny and Rodrigo and Mbappe need to track back. And that's something that they've been lacking doing. Do you actually see them like they're gonna do it, or maybe the first 15 minutes, and then it's gonna be like, all right, no, this is not us.
I've been noticing Rodrigo has been helping with the press this season, and that could be what's affecting him on the offensive end. Like maybe he's tired, but and in full disclosure, we're not analysts. We are just two bros talking about football. We just love the game. But I saw a stat saying that Lewandowski presses twice as much as Mbappe does, and that's saying something.
That's saying something. But then you have Madrid fans that will counter by saying, well, last year we won the Champions League and we were the team that ran the least.
Yeah, but you only had two forwards. You had four in the middle, and Jude is a dog in the middle. You know that. So Manny, he's a dog. He's back in the middle where he belongs. Camavinga is a dog that I feel like we're really going to be missing tomorrow, but he really helps with the press. And then Ceballos, I think, could help with the press also.
Is there any chance that you see Ancelotti going with the 4-4-2 to counter Arsenal's midfield and the way that they're going to most likely control the game?
I don't see him benching Vinny and or Rodrigo or Mbappe in such a like a top match, such an important match. I don't see it happening.
Because if, let's say you had to bench one, you would obviously bench Rodrigo, which I don't understand why, but you
I
would bench
wouldn't bench
Rodrigo.
Rodrigo.
You bench Rodrigo, and then you bring him in as a super sub. Just with Modric too. You can bring both of them as a super sub, and hopefully, they can impact the game at a later time. But you don't think that that's going to happen, right?
No, because Camavinga is not going to be available. So like, who's starting in the middle if you start forward? Because you got Chouameni, you got Jude. Those are locks to start, and then you go with Ceballos, and then you said Modric could be a super sub. So who's that fourth midfielder?
But what about playing Jude like a 10 or like a false nine,
I believe he
where
will
you
play
you
the
kind of
10 tomorrow.
you put Mbappe and Vinicius more on the wings, but you have Jude, kind of control the middle.
Yeah,
Or
hopefully
is
Jude
Ancelotti
plays the
not that
10.
creative?
I don't think he's brave enough. I don't think he's got the nuts to do it.
So what does Madrid need to do to make sure they get the remontada and they win this game?
Well, Madrid starts their games pretty lazy. They'll concede a lot of early goals. They won't get possession of the ball for the first 5 to 10 minutes. You need to come in like the game strong. You need to press. You need to move the ball, and you got to finish your chances, man. How many chances did we see Vinny and Mbappe miss last week?
Can A- can Arsenal and does Arsenal have the goods to
Uh,
keep
they're a,
this
s- they're a
a
strong defensive
very
team. I think they can
yeah?
advance. They're in a good position to advance, but we're not dead until the 90th minute. It's Madrid.
That's true. Whether they say that the Bernabeu is different, but then again, and then in the last couple of games they've lost in the Bernabeu, but then they say the Champions League is different. Against every big team, Real Madrid has lost in the Champions League. And Nice, which we're not gonna call it a big team. So are the players just not hungry anymore? Is the magic not there? Or are they gonna play like they haven't been playing for the last couple of months?
I think it's taking adjustments because of Mbappe's arrival. That's a superstar player. He's getting a lot of attention, from the media, from Ancelotti. Like, he's the man currently, and maybe some players like are disappointed in that, and they want some of the spotlight themselves. And then also, I feel the manager is not helping. I think Ancelotti is making some mistakes.
Look, you heard it here first. Ad, tomorrow is Arteta's audition for that seat.
Man, bring Arteta, bring Klopp, bring Xavi Alonso, bring anybody. I'll sign the papers, man. I'll do it for six
Tomorrow's
figures.
Arteta's, I'm telling you, tomorrow's Arteta's audition for that seat.
Man, the way
If
he
Real
outcoached him
Madrid,
last week, that job says if he wants it.
if Real Madrid lose and don't advance to the semifinals, what does this mean?
I think this is the worst season they've had in recent years, and some drastic changes need to be done. Madrid hasn't been spending a lot lately, besides Jude. They've been working on free agents and young kids. Like, I think it's time for some change.
Is this a failure of a season?
Absolutely, this might be the worst season in the last 5, 6 years.
All right, at least you're an honest Madridista, man. But you know what? Yeah, I mean, but then again, most Madridistas would say it's a failure of a season. Anybody with, with some IQ, with football IQ would tell you this is a failure of a season, especially fact that you just came from winning the Champions League and now you add a player like Mbappe.
Yeah, it's just that a club like Madrid, they demand excellence, they demand results. You're
Right.
not playing at some bottom team that's just trying to survive. Like, you're playing for every cup, and to be fair, they're alive in every competition, but it's not looking good.
All right, Manny, what is the score?
Hopefully, I get a 3-0 and we go to penalties and leave it up to God.
Well, I don't wanna upset you, but I think it's gonna be a 2-1. Madrid's gonna win, but Arsenal's gonna advance.
Man, if we go out with putting up a fight and we play a good game, I'm not as angry as I was last week.
Yeah, I mean, you're not as angry, but it's a failure of a season.
Yeah, it'll be a tough one to swallow, but I think it'll hurt less.
All right, Manny. Well, thank you for coming on the show, brother. Hopefully, for your sake, it goes good. But any last words before we sign off?
La Madrid, let's get another remontada.
See, even Manny's believing from all the way from what is it, Georgia, right?
Yes, sir.
There you go. See, there's Madridistas all over. Hopefully, Madrid wins for the sake of Manny and all the Madridistas, for sake of the good fans and people that enjoy football. Arsenal, you got it. Thank you for watching this show. Hopefully you like this type of content. If you do, please like, share, and subscribe. Make sure to share this to anybody with a little bit or zero football knowledge. Subscribe and see you here next episode.